You're listening to the Unshamed podcast. We talk about important topics that are culturally taboo when it comes to the female body, mind, and soul. We want to break down shame that surrounds these topics so that women can be empowered in their everyday lives. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this with your friends. Well, hello and welcome to the Unshamed podcast. We're back for another episode. This one, I couldn't figure out a good title for this episode, but we're just going to talk about shame and the female body. And we're here with Heather Moore. Heather is an integrated psychotherapist. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And she specializes in marriage and family counseling. And so we have the honor of having Heather here today. Mm-hmm. And she is going to talk about a really important topic, and that's how our mental health and shame sort of collide sometimes, mm-hmm. and how shame can affect us in ways that we're sometimes just not even aware of. And before we started recording, we were talking about like how deeply rooted shame is here in Ireland. Mm. And you just come from work and you were mm-hmm. like, yeah. So like today was all about shame pretty much. Yeah.
Probably because we were, this was going to happen later on.
Yeah.
I'm insane.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? And even the act of doing this has mm-hmm. brought up so much shame, and I'm not good enough. Why am I doing it? Like even as I'm walking up to your door. Mm-hmm. But my own shame is inflamed. But today, working with clients today, it's like there's a theme running here, and mm-hmm. it's shame. Mm-hmm. It's the I'm not good enough. I should be this. My body, my breasts aren't big enough. Mm-hmm. My vagina isn't waxed enough. That's mm-hmm. why he didn't ring me. Yeah. It's this constant narrative. It's a constant story that we're telling ourselves. Mm-hmm. That it's in our bodies. I mean, if we're talking mm-hmm. about shame, you got to start with the body because mm-hmm. it's embodied. Yeah. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
It makes total sense.
Kidding, I'm talking
no, it makes total sense. It does. Like, even, like with my kid, mm-hmm. Eden, earlier, he wasn't feeling right or something was weird. And he was like thinking it was his fault because he didn't drink enough water. And I was like, blame ourselves? Yeah, I said, I had him stop. And I said, look at me. I said, nothing is ever mm-hmm. your fault that's wrong with your body. Wow. Never wrong with you. But mm-hmm. I felt like, man, I don't want him to ever grow up feeling like something is his fault. Yeah. You regulated him, and it was really, I can see as your talk was so meaningful. You didn't want him to take that into his body. No.
And you regulated him, you repaired that mm-hmm. right in the moment, so he didn't carry that into 22 and...
Yeah.
And mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a few questions. First question, is why is shame such an important topic for you? Mm-hmm. And if you have any more to say about why it's important to you, especially here in Ireland, why do you feel?
I feel I'm swimming in it daily, hourly, and I feel my own story is saturated in shame as well. And I think it must be really interesting as an outsider coming into Ireland mm-hmm. and going, what is this? Because when you're an outsider, you do sense things. It's absolutely saturated in Irish culture. It's percolating mm-hmm. Because of the intergenerational transmission of trauma, because of the power of institutions, mm-hmm. The English, the Catholic Church, and somehow it's getting translated, my work is working with human beings who live embodied lives or who are not living embodied lives.
Yeah.
And that's part of my story as well, is my own pain, my own shame, my own trauma that actually led me to being a therapist. Mm-hmm. Because why is shame so important to me? There's something, and even I have to say this too, I felt that the evangelical scene in the 80s and 90s really shamed me. It was like, I don't know, did the Irish people replace the Catholic Church with the evangelical scene and go, I don't know. So for me, it wasn't a safe place. It was more body shame. Mm-hmm. shame about my sexuality, shame about the expression of self, shame about what I'd wear, how I'd speak. And I felt that religion really silenced me, shut me down, and deauthorized my life. And it took me years.
Yeah.
Decades.
To separate religion from true faith.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Like, does that make...
It makes total sense, because...
I'm going off topic, please.
There is not really a specific flow. Right. We're just going to talk.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's funny how, like, we equate Jesus with stuff that people do.
Yeah.
Total moronic behavior. We go, oh, that must be Jesus. Nope. Like, the laundries, all that stuff, all that terrible stuff.
Yeah.
People just kind of lump into one thing. And I think Jesus is like... don't say
not my deal. That's not my deal.
That's okay, don't mention me.
Yeah. That was not. Yeah, just.
Yeah. Do you want to share more of your story, or?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the laundries.
As much as you feel like you want.
The dirty. Yeah, I mean, because I'm actually not from a Catholic background, so that's weird in Ireland.
It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah. So I was like the kind of Protestant background, Anglican growing up, but kind of working class, so none of that.
Oh, right.
None of that
not
stuff.
The typical,
like the private schools or any of that jazz. And from Donegal, and it's funny, you know, I was walking over here going, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm so terrified, and I'm sweating, and I've got really bad BO right now. But I was thinking 27 years ago, to this day, my husband, we were getting married on the 19th of June. So my husband said, we need to just pull up to this lane because I have to tell you something. And I thought it was like for like a snog, because we did the evangelical, Christian thing. And he said, listen, your mum has told me something and you don't know this about yourself. I was going, what are you talking? What the hell?
Yeah.
He went, listen, she told me that you were born in a mother and child home. And I think it has taken me years, many decades, that's a nice way of saying 27 years. It took me so long to integrate that piece of information. And she didn't feel safe enough to tell me, or shameless or free in herself. So it explained a lot. And I remember people in the playground when I was a kid saying, oh, you know, you're a bastard, you were born in a marriage. So I knew I was born out of marriage or wedlock, which was a big deal in 1967 Ireland or 1970s Ireland. It's not a big deal now. But she was sent to a mother and child home, and she was 16. Like my son, my youngest, my baby is 16. He can look after cats.
Yeah.
You know? It's so...
If that.
No, he'd love this microphone. Yeah. So it's like... And my dad, I think apparently my dad stopped the adoption. And I mean, they married. And they lived in England away from the shame of Ireland.
Gosh, it's so hard.
So I think I didn't know I was filled with shame, but implicitly I lived it at every level. Not being good enough, perfectionism. My body was too this, too that, not big enough, not feminine enough. I think I embodied the shame, and I lived it out in so many ways, Katie. But it's taken, it's still even last August, I was at a conference, a psychoanalytic conference in Lithuania, and this Dutch psychoanalyst said, do you realise you use the word mistake in your language so much when you're speaking, and the word accident? I wonder, is that connected with your birth? And I was like,
wow.
And I know. So even at a speech, because Jacques Lacan talks about how the unconscious is in our speech patterns. Yeah. So mistake was, I made a mistake, I came to this, it was in my speech, it was embedded in my speech.
Wow.
So that's, and how much I was deauthorizing myself. And, we were talking earlier about how Irish people do that self-deprecating thing of like, like so much of that.
Yeah, you can't take a compliment. Or,
It's like, I think I bought it in pennies.
Yeah. Oh, stop, I fished from a bin. It was terrible. Like, it was, yeah.
So that kind of, I'm a mistake, is something I really lived out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't explicit, it was implicit. It was really, I don't know if I'm...
No, totally, making sense. How, do you feel like shame affects us, like, not just on a mental and emotional level, but like an actual physical level?
Yeah. But I mean, we got to, if you talk about shame, we got to talk about the body.
Yeah.
And, just what you told there, that story about your son, Alan Shore, is an American psychoanalyst and neurobiologist. He talks about how when the caregiver doesn't repair with the baby, so the baby goes into a hyper aroused state. I'm hungry, I scream, I cry. So the ordinary good enough mother will soothe the baby with her voice, or good enough father with rocking, with the breast, and it's repaired. Yeah. But this, sometimes that baby will scream and it won't be met by the beautiful gaze. It won't be met by a loving, soothing voice. It won't be met by holding. It will be not met. It will be abandoned at some level, dysregulated, we'd say. So the baby will go from hyperarousal, anxious state, into a very deadly, we'd say the hypoaroused state. And that, there's a lot of cortisol in the body. So much cortisol builds up, and that really affects the dendrites and the connectivity in the body and brain connection.
So like learning and memory and all that?
Yeah, and the hippocampus, speech, averting the eyes, not being able to do full eye contact, digestive problems, problems with respiratory, reproductive problems on so many levels.
Wow. Yeah.
Cortisol is really corrosive on the human body. But we need a human being bigger than us to regulate our states, to take care of us, so that we internalize that and can do it for ourselves, Just like what you did with your son earlier on.
Totally. Yeah.
It's the simple, ordinary, good enough stuff.
Yeah, that you are good enough. Yeah. Because, from every angle, it feels like we're told we're not good enough. Yeah. And this is a constant thing.
Women.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. A constant thing we have to fight against. And it's kind of a battle.
Your body's not good enough. It's not like Instagram, yoga, all that. The good enough mother. So I think more is demanded of women now in terms of career, motherhood, sex goddess, all rolled into the one human being. Yeah. And your garden and, your sourdough. Like,
I have a sourdough that's probably dead in there right now.
Mine hasn't been fed. No, it's fed mine. Right. It was growing. Do you know what I mean?
No, it was fine. Yeah. But I think I've managed to somehow kill it, which is actually kind of hard to kill sourdough. But
it's very hard to kill.
Yeah. So sex goddess, perhaps, but sourdough.
Sex goddess, but sourdough.
Sourdough person.
Sourdough goddess. Maybe not cutting it.
Not really. Yeah. But that's okay. Yeah. If you are enjoying what you're hearing, please subscribe. That way you can hear more of it. That way it pops up into your, you see it and you're like, oh, I need to watch another episode. And definitely comment down below if you're like, ooh, this is something that I've experienced with shame, or you want to ask a question or whatever. Please do, because actually any question that you ask, I can send on to Heather and she can
she can lie.
She can be like, here's my expertise, but she has loads of expertise, like years and years. Yes. So if she can answer it, we'll find someone who can. And we want to get your questions answered and help you feel unshamed, really. Like, we don't like shame. It's toxic. It doesn't belong in our society. So this Unshamed podcast, that's what we're all about. That's where we want to go. So that's the vision of this podcast. But if you like what you're hearing, be sure to like this. So we're talking with Heather Moore, and she is telling us a bit about her story and a bit about her thoughts on shame. But I think, can we talk about more about the national level kind of in shame.
Wow.
Like,
and a few PhDs.
But I'm like,
wow.
But there's people who are listening who might not be from Ireland. So maybe like a little bit of
goodness.
like a tiny drop in the ocean about like, you know, what, like shame in Ireland. Why do people think that this place has so much shame here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, we need a historian.
Yeah, we need a historian.
Around, I mean, you know, the domination of the English and the Irish identity, the Irish language. So much was shamed in Irish kind of national psyche. And then it is still a very... It's since 1922. My history's terrible.
Oh,
my husband was listening now. He'd kick my ass. It's still a very young country in many ways. And then the Catholic Church and that huge power into church and state and education and contraception.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The fact that you couldn't get a condom until the 60s, right?
No.
Was it the 80s?
1993. It was something. No, because I'll tell you why, Katie, because I remember I was married in 1993, 17 years ago, around this time. And I remember walking in to get the condoms and doing this thing with my hand going,
oh my,
you know, I'm kosher. That's nuts.
Are you serious?
So it was around the early 90s when contraception became freely available in Ireland. What? When you know, homosexuality became decriminalised and suicide became decriminalised.
Suicide? Oh my gosh.
So you've got so much, you've got a history saturated in stigma, taboo, religion, the body. The body is carnal, the body is bad, you know, masturbation.
Yeah.
I just saw one of your kids. Masturbation
they're
is bad.
asleep.
The body is sinful. Jezebel. Like,
yeah.
You know, and I think up till the 60s, if you had just had a baby, you weren't allowed to go to mass because you were still the bleeding woman.
Oh my gosh.
And you were unclean.
Way to go way back to Jewish law, you know?
Hello. Yeah, back to the woman with the bleeding woman in Mark's Gospel.
Yeah.
So all of that is only, it's still very, I remember, it's like, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, it hasn't been long then since all that.
No.
That's really, and
we really think, we've had all these referendums, we're so, no, we're not.
Yeah.
No.
No amount of wokeness would probably undo a lot of that stuff.
It's because then you have generations who are traumatized by institutions, the mother and baby homes, pregnancy, your body, your sexuality, your femininity. So that if that's not dealt with at a bodily embodied level, that will be that dissociation, that pockets of dissociation will be going to the next generation.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we talked about in an earlier episode about, you know, I feel like the antidote is so simplistic, but like to say that the antidote for shame is to say, okay, let's rip our bras off and just run around like, it's not about that. It's not about swinging 180 because that doesn't really deal with the problem.
No, because it's still coming in the door.
Yeah, the problem is, do we know who we are? Do we know that there's no part of us that's dirty? There's no part of us that's unworthy? That we're actually made with care and love, and that we're not dirty throwaway things.
Not disposable.
Right, and that's I think for me that's the root of why I don't feel the shame, or that the shame might be there, but I know that it's not me.
Yeah,
it's not part of me.
It's somehow you've separated it. It's like you've landed in your story. You've embraced yourself, and that's very grounding. You know.
Yeah. What would you say? And this is probably the last bit. What would you say would be a few things that women can do practically, where they can help to sort of start to break down the shame
to live shamelessly?
Yeah. And do you feel like storytelling is a really important part of that?
I know you. I think you said that to me at one stage, and in terms of storytelling, it's important, of course, to have that safety, because I didn't have the safety to say that in my evangelical church scenes. It wasn't safe. So I found people outside who wouldn't say they were, they wouldn't profess they were people of faith or Christians, but they were compassionate and empathic people who helped me land in my story, helped me own my story.
Yeah.
And I think to facilitate that for the other, that's powerful. Because when we, it's funny, in attachment theory, we talk about someone who's been traumatized and been through hell and back, that if they have a coherent narrative around their story, that is very regulating, that they will go on, they call it earned secure attachment, because you've earned it. You've worked on parts of your life to own it, to embrace it, to land in it, and it means that the next generation don't live out of that traumatized story. That's that's boring attachment theory. Mary Main and Hesse, their work. So I know that from an academic point of view. So to really help women, equip women, or give them the space to own their stories, land in their stories, to engage with them. Martin Buber, the existential famous philosopher, he talks about the I-thou encounter, and it's about how we really meet each other, not as objectifying, because women have been objectified so much in their bodies, and they do it to themselves, and they self-destruct their bodies and harm their bodies. But can I encounter the other? Can I make a safe space where you can really tell me your story, your truth, and help you to accept and integrate this? And if we could do that for each other, that would be... It didn't happen in my generation.
But it'll happen in this one.
Yeah, it didn't. And I think it is. I think there is a shift in Ireland,
Yeah. I mean...
And if I don't answer something, you just make me. I
will, but like there's this dog eat dog culture in female culture sometimes of that. Who's going to be the top banana? You know what I mean? And instead of like, banana. But like instead of figuring out, all right, who can be the best?
Yeah.
What if we said, I'm going to purposefully come eye level with you, to help you share, and help you be your whole person, you know. So I think that's a big shift that needs to happen in just female culture. We need to stop shaming each other, and start inviting storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's powerful, and we need to tell our stories in a way that helps each other belong. That it moves us towards each other, not from each other. We need ways of being human that open up the possibility of really being truly alive in our bodies and alive in our beings with each other, that open up the possibility of disagreements, creativity, and deepen our friendships. Yeah,
totally. Well, thank you, Heather, for talking to us. It has been brilliant. You guys, stay tuned for the next, part 2 of me talking to Heather about shame in the female body. We're going to have a little bit more for you. So stay tuned for that next episode. If you like what's going on, click like and subscribe. Don't forget, because the more we have of that, the more we can keep this going. And the more people will see this podcast and engage. Because Heather and I have been talking about sharing stories. The more we share stories, the more we can come eye level with each other, the better this will get. So stay tuned for next time. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unshamed podcast. Join us next time for another topic that we hope empowers you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your friends.